Today I have the honour of interviewing Lawrence Bransby. Lawrence is a former teacher, a novelist, and most recently a travel writer. Lawrence, would you like to tell us just a little bit about yourself?
My name is Lawrence. I was born in Durban, South Africa. Spent all my working life as a teacher, now retired. Emigrated to this country about 25 years ago with my family, and am now living in Eccles.
Oh, fantastic. What was your subject?
High school English.
Fantastic.
For most of my teaching life,
Mm-hmm.
and then the last 10 years was primary school.
Favourite text to study?
Oh gosh, Great Gatsby,
Great Gatsby.
Hamlet.
Or hardcore choices. Okay. How would you say you met Jesus?
Quite interesting. I was 15, and me and a bunch of mates were hanging around on a Friday evening one day, and a girl called Carol Beaumont came up and said, would you guys like to go to club? And club? What is it? And it was a Youth for Christ club. We all got into a car and we went to this Youth for Christ club, and it was there that I became a Christian. And interestingly, it was also there that I met my wife.
Oh, wow.
What is fascinating for me, and I think about it so often, is just the serendipity of that. And I often think, imagine if Carol, on that one Friday evening, had not said, would you guys like to go to club? Or if she was there and she'd wanted to say it and then it had held back. And I just think to myself, if that had not happened, I might not be a Christian today. I would not have met my wife. My children and my grandchildren would not be alive. It's scary.
It's fascinating how much of our lives come down to these little crux points, isn't it?
Just a few words. One girl saying, would you guys like to go to club? Which totally transformed my entire life.
So you meet Jesus and you're 15 at this point, or younger?
15,
15, yeah. So how does being a Christian affect your life from then to now?
Well, I suppose it's the anchor, the center of my life. It defines my life. I suppose it has to. If you're a Christian, that is your center. That is it's that gives you identity. It determines the decisions you make. That is what being a Christian is about, I suppose.
So how would you say it affects your day-to-day life now?
Now, I would say it defines the way I live my life, my attempt to live my life with honesty, with integrity, with generosity, I hope, with kindness to others, just the core values of what it means to live a good life. I think it's that Christianity defines, that I'm trying to work towards now.
Absolutely. And lastly, you're quite into your motorcycles, aren't you? You've sort of clocked up quite a few miles on those. Do you have a particularly favourite trip that you've done on a motorbike?
They're all favourites, and I suppose I could speak of my first long trip with my son, which was the Trans-Africa. When we came to this country, we actually rode across Africa, and my son was 17 at the time. He was still in school. He didn't even have a proper motorbike license. But I think perhaps my most meaningful trip was the Trans-Russia, a trip that I did just after my wife died. Mm-hmm. That was 20,000 kilometres done on a 25-year-old DR350 that had languished in a shed in Kyrgyzstan for 2 years. And then I flew out to Kyrgyzstan, got it out the shed, dusted it off, and then rode it 20,000 kilometres across Russia and back. It wasn't an easy trip. It was a very hard trip, and it was a very lonely trip, because always before, when you're on a journey, you know that you've got a home with a wife. Yeah. There's someone there waiting for you to get back. Yeah. Whereas on this trip, with my wife only having been a few months dead, there was that knowledge that I would get home to an empty house. So it was incredibly lonely, and it made me question to a very large degree what this whole thing of life is all about. And I can remember on many occasions on the trip just standing there and thinking, you know, what am I doing? Who am I? Why am I here? And coming to the conclusion that my anchor is Jesus. That without that anchor, I would be very lost.
Yeah.
And that was special.
I imagine becoming a Christian and meeting your wife at the same time, those two things can get quite entangled, I would have thought.
Yes, well, we lived a Christian life together. You know, our whole life was lived as Christians together, and we brought up our children as Christians. So it was important, yeah.
And when was your Russia trip?
That was 3 years ago now.
Wow.
4 years ago.
Right. Okay.
Because lockdown has been 2 years, and then after the Russian trip I did Trans-America, Canada and Alaska.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Gosh, I would kill for some of those adventures. They sound amazing, especially when all my fantastic adventures have all been by bus. Listen, Lauren, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today, and particularly about not the easiest subject on stuff. So we really appreciate that.
It's a pleasure, Tom. Thank you.
I'm Giles, by the way.
Oh, that's a pleasure, Giles. Thank you. So where did the Tom come in then?
There's a guy called Tom Giles who's the pastor here.
Oh, for Pete's sake. Sorry.
That is okay.
That's bad.